is fully adapted Mahoraga.
Oh, fully adapted Mahoraga.
A fully adapted Mahoraga.
Fully adapted Mahoraga.
Fully adapted Mahoraga.
Hello everyone, Gino here. The concept of a fully adapted Mahoraga didn't just recently get popular in power scaling discussions, but has been a thing brewing on the internet since late December 2025. Jujutsu Kaisen is one of the, if not the, most prominent anime airing now, and their fans have tried to join the whole power scaling debates in the past, like with Gojo's Infinity versus Goku. And we know how that went. So, with the recent chapters of JJK Modulo, JJK fans have somehow entered these discussions again, with their new fan-made hypothetical OC fully adapted Mahoraga, claiming, and I quote, he'd solo any character in fiction if he is adapted to all their abilities prior to the fight. This concept isn't really a new thing that came out of nowhere. It's something that had already been brewing in the fandom, from salty Mahoraga fans claiming that despite Mahoraga having a 0% win rate inverse, that if he had adapted to maybe Gojo or Sukuna in Shibuya, he would have won those fights, or maybe even be the strongest character in Jujutsu Kaisen. So that a JJK character can maybe solo all of Naruto, Bleach, Dragon Ball, or maybe even all of fiction? Well, the only problem is, even granting this hypothetical to be true, Mahoraga would still lose to a lot of characters in fiction. And I'll explain why. Mahoraga is a Shikigami of the Ten Shadows technique, and probably the strongest one, as no one could control it with the sole exception of the King of Curses. Mahoraga has the ability to adapt to any and all phenomena. With enough spins, Mahoraga can effectively gain resistances and immunities to techniques via his adaptation, and also, which is pretty important, not just immunity. He can also develop ways to bypass techniques as well, like we saw him do with Infinity. Now, the problem with the entire debate is that JJK fans can't really define what a fully adapted Mahoraga actually is, and that gets a lot of people stuck with this vague, really vague, description of what a fully adapted Mahoraga is supposed to be. I'll explain the rules, and what a fully adapted Mahoraga actually is, and how this applies to versus matchups. Firstly, this version of Mahoraga has already adapted to a character's abilities beforehand. Second, and I think this is important, Mahoraga is going to be fighting these characters individually, not all at once, because it would make no sense to say, oh, Mahoraga adapted to an outerversal character and would use that same adaptation to fight lesser characters. We're not doing that at all. Yeah, then a lot of people go into this idiosyncratic argument that Mahoraga can't adapt to higher dimensional attacks, or his adaptation is only limited to his verse, and that phenomena is something Mahoraga needs to perceive first before he can adapt, which are all true, by the way, but it sorta defeats the point. It's supposed to be a hypothetical. It's completely fine to say Mahoraga hasn't, so he can't. But then again, we are trying to see if your favorite character can beat this hypothetical, despite being at a disadvantage of already being adapted to. This is sort of like a Goku with no ki versus Luffy or something. Goku having no ki is impossible, but for the debate and the premise, we'd allow it so arguments can be made for this premise. I mean, isn't the entire concept of power scaling and cross-verse matchups based on a lot of assumptions anyways? And you'd get different answers depending on who you ask. Now, contrary to popular belief, the ability Mahoraga possesses isn't adaptation. Well, it is, but it's also something else, and not just regular-ass adaptation, as plain adaptation is just the utilization of one's body to adapt to a phenomenon. But what Mahoraga does is he gains full resistances to abilities thrown at him, and also powers to bypass techniques as well. So what Mahoraga's ability is, what we power scalers call reactive evolution. Like, maybe Broly from Dragon Ball Super, or Doomsday from DC Comics, being able to seemingly adapt to his opponent's abilities and attacks, to the point of developing new powers and abilities on the fly to counter them. For the people who somewhat still doubt Mahoraga's adaptation wouldn't make him as strong as his opponent, the thing is, Mahoraga should be at least as strong as the person he's up against after adaptation is complete. We see this as Mahoraga was just below, or at the level of 15 Fingers Sukuna in Shibuya, and by adapting to Gojo's abilities, he was able to tank Gojo's red and blue attacks, and even fight on somewhat equal footing with Gojo. Despite being below 15 Fingers Sukuna arcs prior, and Gojo is miles stronger and would utterly no-diff both of them. Even the fact he can fight against Dabura in Modulo, with Dabura being stated to be a Sukuna-level threat, so by adapting, he gets stronger. But his strength is heavily reliant on the strength of his opponent at the time of adaptation, which makes things interesting. Since Mahoraga's adaptation simply works by experiencing a phenomenon a single time, therefore, repeated exposure to the same phenomenon shortens his adaptation process considerably, so its evolution never fully stops. Even after fully adapting to an opposing technique, it would continue to adapt to itself, obtaining more ways to bypass techniques. And this is an actual problem. If Mahoraga's adaptation never stops, when can we say Mahoraga has fully adapted then? Or in short, a fully adapted Mahoraga can't actually exist without contradiction. Crazy, right? Even the fact that adaptation is progressive, so a fully adapted Mahoraga would be adapted to what exists now, and not what can possibly exist. Not to mention, Mahoraga's adaptation is only physical, so he can't technically adapt to phenomena that are abstract. JJK fans have to prove Mahoraga has the ability to adapt to things that are abstract, which we have never seen him do, because he simply cannot. Using conceptual manipulation, or existence erasure, etc., would still kill a fully adapted Mahoraga, because he can only adapt to phenomena that are physical. So defeating Mahoraga requires a character to introduce a new phenomena Mahoraga needs to adapt to. And it's still possible to do so, even after Mahoraga has adapted to their abilities. It's even pretty obvious. When Mahoraga adapted to red and blue each, which are all still fundamentally the exact same technique, limitless with different applications. And in that fight, Mahoraga had adapted to red and blue, but had to adapt to purple separately. Mind you, purple is just the combination of red and blue, which Mahoraga already adapted to. Since Mahoraga had already adapted to both, why should purple affect him? Well, it's because he had adapted to both attacks individually, but hadn't adapted to a new phenomena of both of them combined. Which is by far the biggest problem with a fully adapted Mahoraga. He can't adapt to every possible thing a character can do with their attacks. I mean, just by applying it differently, it creates a new phenomenon for Mahoraga to adapt to, and gives his opponent an edge while Mahoraga needs to catch up. We see this in 4K. When Gojo uses his battle IQ to put himself between Mahoraga and Blue, since Blue attracts anything indiscriminately, Mahoraga's adaptation actually backfired, which is insane. I genuinely don't understand how people think Mahoraga beats Goku anyway. I thought once Mahoraga had adapted to any technique, he becomes unbeatable, huh? Now, I've heard some other arguments for fully adapted Mahoraga from Discord debaters, like he can adapt to win cons and the concept of losing, which are both completely retarded. I mean, do people actually take these people seriously? Well, in all, they are utterly wrong. Because the concept of losing isn't even a character's ability, and the concept of loss depends on who's invoking it, or what specific semantic reduction is being invoked there. Because someone's conceptualization of loss could be coming out on top in a fight. Someone else's could be not dying. Or a third could be getting killed in a fight. So when you say he adapts to the concept of losing, you'd have to specify what notion exactly. As if it's all notions, it just leads to a contradiction. Because Mahoraga can't adapt to something arbitrary. A fully adapted Mahoraga would only beat characters that are one-trick ponies, as stated by Sukuna. With all that said, I just wanted to say a fully adapted Mahoraga is complete dog shit. He beats literally no one, he gets passed around by Naruto, Saiki K, fuck it, add Luffy as well in there. I mean, Mahoraga adapting to all your abilities doesn't mean he's stronger than you. Therefore, he doesn't beat characters with high enough battle IQ like Goku, who can simply analyze a person's fighting style, their movements, their techniques, and even their weakness as he continues learning and improving with each strike. Or characters like Saitama, who, with intense emotions, could will himself to be stronger than someone literally copying his power. Or characters with abstract hacks abilities. Or characters with willpower. Or characters with reactive evolution of their own, like Broly, etc. There are just so many characters out there that would beat the shit out of Mahoraga. In short, I don't know why JJK fans try to make this an argument. It's not close. Fully adapted Mahoraga loses to Naruto. It's that serious. This man is a fraud. If you disagree with anything said here, Discord is in the bio. Peace.